Another 2 episodes into the season, and we've been introduced to yet another Titan shifter. We got to see Hanji do a double take at the mention of a familiar name, and someone I consider a background character has become important in some mysterious way. There's a lot to cover in these 2 episodes, so let's get to it. So the first thing we see in these 2 episodes, and I'm talking about episode 28 and 29, that's episode 3 and 4 of season 2, but the first thing we see in these episodes is Connie facing what's left of his home village. The structures are all damaged, but there isn't any blood anywhere, and there's not any bodies anywhere, and it just doesn't quite stack up. Like, if Titans attack this village, which, I mean, we have a Titan still here, so that looks like it's what happened, how is it that there aren't any victims? One can hope that what that means is that everybody escaped the Titans, right? But the horses are still in their stall, so it seems unlikely that the people could escape the Titans on foot. Why would they leave their horses behind? And Reiner really keeps pushing the idea to Connie that everyone escaped or evacuated. And I can understand Reiner not wanting Connie to get bogged down in despair while they're out in this field and they're on a mission. They still have work to do. But I also wonder if Reiner knows something Connie doesn't know, and Reiner doesn't want Connie to know whatever it is. But the conclusion I think the show really wants us to draw is that people in the town are Titan shifters, and they shifted and they destroyed their own village. It does seem like a bit much to think that everybody in the village were Titans, like everyone, but maybe the ones who were Titans kind of gave the others some kind of a heads up, so they got the heck out of town before T-Day. And I'm going to call this seemingly coordinated Titan attack on the interior of Wall Rose T-Day. And now, after having some comments that I've read and reflecting on the story, and understanding that the timeline is being played with in these episodes, I'm going to assume that Annie's transformation was either part of, or maybe a trigger for, this T-Day. And I have to remember that Connie and Sasha and most of these sequestered cadets weren't present in Stohess when Annie's identity as the female Titan was revealed. So most of the characters we're seeing here, well, they're unaware of that information. Eren is probably the only publicly known Titan shifter at this point. I have to remind myself of that. But as Connie's getting on his horse to ride out of town, this withered limb Titan that's lying on top of his ruined house, it sort of groans out, "Welcome home." And Connie does say that the Titan looks like his mom. So even though I was way off about the female Titan being Armin's mom, I feel a little vindicated that at least somebody's mom might be a Titan. And it does make sense that it would be his mom, because it's clearly an immobile Titan. And it's in his mom's house, so it adds up, right? Not to mention a really shady character, Ymir. Well, she tries really hard to convince Connie not to think it's his mom, so it's probably his mom. And all the lesser Titans that the Beast Titan seems to command, well, they had to come from somewhere, right? And as these episodes unfold, it seems less and less likely that they came from outside Wall Rose. But how? I just don't understand this. How can Connie come from not just a family, but potentially a whole village of Titan shifters and not even know it? Like, why would that knowledge be kept from Connie? Also, is it possible, just maybe, that Connie is a shifter, but he doesn't know it? I mean, Eren didn't know he was a shifter until he got chomped. So it could just be that Connie hasn't faced the right kind of situation or the right circumstance to unlock the Titan transformerific ability that he might have. I have no idea at all how you would sort of test this kind of thing. Do you just go around stabbing people at random and see what happens? That seems extreme. Also, there's a conversation between Ymir and Krista that takes place later in the story that suggests lost or suppressed memories may be an element of this narrative. So maybe Connie did know about his Titan transformerific village at some point, but he simply doesn't know now. And there are 2 patrol groups that are riding along Wall Rose from different directions, and they're both looking for the breach in the wall that allowed the Titans into the interior, and the groups meet without any kind of defect being found in the wall. And the way this meeting occurs, it's at night, and they're carrying torches, and it's in the woods under the light of the moon. Well, these circumstances really push sort of scary movie elements. So when they fail to find a breach in the wall, I immediately think of this horror movie trope that the call is coming from inside the house. Are you familiar with that? If you're not familiar with it, it's a scenario in which there's a babysitter and she gets a phone call from some creepy guy who threatens to murder her. So she locks all the doors and she calls the police, and then the police trace the call to find out that the murderer's been in the house the whole time. I think When a Stranger Calls is kind of the famous movie that's related to that trope. And, this kind of idea that those titans are out there in the populace and that they've come from inside the house, so to speak, well, it sort of turns the whole thing into a big game of Among Us, with multiple imposters and everybody's acting kind of sus. Because I spend the rest of the time watching these 2 episodes looking for reasons why every single character is a Titan shifter at this point. But I still don't feel like I know what these Titan shifters' objective is, and they don't seem to be unified either. Because someone else who's later revealed to be a shifter, well, this person isn't acting in concert with the Titans that are attacking right now. I mean, that character's being attacked by Titans when they reveal their ability. And adding to this horror movie element that we've got going on in these episodes, we also see that the Titans are now able to be active at night. And this goes against the rules of Titan behavior that Hanji taught us back in Season 1. She taught us that Titans draw their power from the sun. And Armin, later in these episodes, even suggested that his group move at night due to this understanding. And if you've been watching my videos, I've kind of recommended they move at night too for this reason. But now we see a group of Titans breaking the rules. And I suspect this is because they are Titan shifters and not just what I'll call standard Titans, even if there is such a thing as standard Titans at this point. But I have to say that I do hope the show gives us a clear, in-story reason for the Night Titans, because if it doesn't, I'll be a little disappointed that it just kind of arbitrarily throws its own rules out the window. But I found the show to be well constructed so far, so I feel fairly confident that a satisfactory explanation will be provided. I just might have to wait for it though. Sasha has really covered some ground in the past 3 episodes. And that's one of my biggest clues that we've kind of got this dual timeline going on here. And by dual timeline, I mean that what we're seeing go on with Connie and Reiner and that group, well, that isn't exactly lined up with what we see happening with Eren and Hanji's group. But we see Sasha sequestered with Connie and Reiner, and we see Sasha ride out to her home region the same time Connie is riding for his own. And Sasha rescues a little girl, stabs a Titan in the eye, she reunites with her father, then somehow links back up with Erwin, is given a message by Erwin that she then rides to Eren and Hanji's location to deliver to Hanji. What I'm saying is, there's a little time gap between what Reiner, Connie, and Krista are up to and what Eren and Levi's crew are up to. I think the events of T-Day and the Beast Titan's appearance could be happening at about the same time Annie and Eren are fighting it out in Stohess, and I think Sasha is used to clue the viewers in on that fact. If the show didn't give us some sort of temporal clue, it would kind of be playing dirty poker, you know? And no matter how fast Sasha can ride, no matter how much potato-fueled speed she has going through the countryside, it would take her at least a couple of days, right? To get from her old home place to some place where Erwin is, and then to Hanji. But I'm glad to see Sasha's story come to a happy ending when she's given her favorite snack, a plain boiled potato. I'm going to start carrying boiled potatoes just in case I run into Sasha. Something a little more interesting, and also kind of puzzling, is happening when Sasha delivers her message. The Wallace pastor, Pastor Nick, well, he's really getting pushed hard to share his secret knowledge of the walls. He sees the suffering of the people and all the distraught refugees, and the priest really struggles with the suffering. But still, he feels like he cannot disobey his faith, he cannot disobey the Wallace order, but he does kind of find a loophole. He agrees to tell them the name of someone who can share the secret that he's not allowed to share. He gives some of the details. It's a female who joined the 104th Cadet class, but as he says the name, well, that's when Sasha rushes through the room and takes the viewer's attention away from it. But then, just like a few minutes after, like very soon after, Eren, Armin, and Mikasa heard it, and they tell us that it was Krista. So I don't understand why the story was playing coy with the reveal, why the story sort of obfuscated the reveal of who it is, only within a matter of seconds to tell us the truth. So that part I don't get from a storytelling perspective. I thought they were going to try to keep us hanging for a while. Maybe they thought about doing that and changed their mind really quickly, or it's something in post-production. I don't know. I wonder if this was just enough of an interruption maybe to mislead Eren, and then have Eren mislead us when he shares the information. I guess that's still a possibility, but I'm kind of married to the idea now that Krista is somebody significant. It seemed odd to me, not sure why. Now, if you watch the Ilsa's Notebook OVA, there's a moment of payoff here in this episode 28, because when Hanji overhears Eren and his friends talking about Krista, they say she's always hanging around with Ymir. And this sort of makes Hanji's eyes light up with like this glimmer of recognition, curiosity, I would even say excitement from that psycho, because she read Ilsa's notebook, and Ymir is a name that was written in it. We also see that Hanji's plan for Eren because she's discovered that the walls are the product of Titan's stone skin secretions. Now, of course, Armin had figured this out as well, but she doesn't want to hear from Armin. She like literally slaps her hand on his face to shut him up when he's trying to chime in on the topic. But the plan that Hanji has is for Eren to transform into a Titan and use his own stone skin to seal the hole in the wall. Now, I think there are a lot of flaws with this plan of Hanji's. First off, I don't know that the stone skin technique is universal among Titans. We've only seen it from, the Titans in the walls plus Annie. Plenty of Titans we've seen don't seem to do this. And even if it is a skill that can be developed, is it something that Eren knows how to do? Like, he probably has to learn how to do it. I'd imagine he would at least need to practice a couple of times before he's put on the spot. We've already seen at least 3 times that Eren has trouble even with the basic transformation on demand. So who knows how hard it would be for him to pull off this whole stone secretion thing on demand. Also, this is a plan to fix a problem that doesn't exist, right? Because the patrols, they failed to find any holes in Wall Rose. And the breach in Trost, well, that was plugged with a boulder. I don't know, maybe it's a plan to plug the breach in Wall Maria. I guess that is still the plan for Erwin eventually, right? And speaking of Wall Maria, Eren makes sure to tug on his key to remind us that we still might want to try and make it to Grish's basement at some point, but with all this chaos going on, it's kind of hard for me to stay focused on the basement anymore. Something nice is that we do get to check in with Vermin and Rico, and we see them fighting Titans with a combination of cannons and slicing. And we also see Hannes riding along the wall looking for damage. I didn't really pick up on much to add to the greater story from those 3, but it was kind of nice to see what they were up to check in on them. There's also a scout that seems to have a nice little arc in these episodes, and I call him Blonde Elvis because of his pompadour hairstyle. And as I said in the reaction, I've heard Elvis was a natural blonde. I mean, I was never around the guy to know or anything, so maybe he wasn't, but I've heard that before. Now, his actual name is Gelgar, and I just think Elvis is a better name than Gelgar, so I'm going to call him Elvis. But he's this nice, reluctant hero. He'd rather be drinking booze than fighting Titans, but he's stepping up and he's fighting hard because that's his job and he does his job. But he does complain about it. And of course, poor guy, Elvis gets chomped. But the saddest thing about it is before he dies, he gets teased with one final drink from his beloved booze. But then he finds out that the bottle's empty because Krista used the liquor to clean a wound, and it's honestly strangely heartbreaking that he didn't get that drink. It's like the cruelest death in Attack on Titan so far. Isn't that crazy? And soon after we find out that Krista holds the key to the secrets of the Titans in the walls, the story returns to her and Ymir, and we learn a little bit about their relationship. It appears that Ymir is a protector of Krista for some reason, and we find this out because we learn that Ymir kind of sandbagged her own scores during the cadet training so that Krista could make the top 10. Like Krista was 11 and Ymir was 10, so Ymir, scored low on purpose a few times to bump Krista up into the top 10. And the idea was that if Krista had a spot in the top 10, she'd join the military police. But of course, thanks to a string of motivational speeches from Eren, she chose the Survey Corps instead. And then, just like Mikasa followed Eren, well, Ymir followed Krista into the Scouts. And when they're talking about this, Krista asks if Ymir did this because of who Krista's family is. So now I've got to ask, who is Krista's family? Why does Krista know secrets about the walls? And why would her family be a reason for Ymir to prop her up and to protect her? Also, Ymir seems to serve sort of a bodyguard role to Krista, the way that Mikasa is devoted to protecting Eren. That's why I made that comparison just a second ago. And I always find these parallels and reflections and echoes and dynamics interesting. However, we will later find out that Krista isn't the one who turns into a Titan in this relationship. But back to Krista's family. Could Krista be part of the royal family? I mean, that's obviously a family you would have to think of as being important. That seems to be the family that's most likely to be a motivator to someone to help this person out. Maybe she's even the crown princess, like she might be next in line to the throne. And this might be a role that would allow her access to the secrets of the walls that the general population is forbidden to know about. And I've said it before, but all this Titan unrest that started with the fall of Shiganshina, well, it really feels like the result of a broken promise to me. Probably a promise broken by the royal family that was made to the Titan shifters. But now I really want to talk about Ymir, and how this show may be tricking us with time a little bit. So Ilsa wrote in her notebook about 5 years before Hanji read it. So I'm going to say it was roughly around the same time as the fall of Shiganshina. And since Ymir is in the same cadet class as Eren, I'm going to guess she's about the same age as Eren. And Eren was maybe 9 or 10 years old when his mom got chomped. But I honestly don't think the Ymir that Ilsa wrote about in her notebook was a 10-year-old. So there are a few possibilities that could explain it. It could just be a coincidence, and there are 2 unrelated people named Ymir on this show. And in the real world, that would be far and away the most likely thing. But this isn't the real world. It's a story world that so far seems to be well constructed, and a meaningless coincidence would be shoddy world building in my opinion, so I don't think that's the case. Another possibility is that the Ymir with Krista is the daughter or maybe the granddaughter of the Ymir in Ilsa's notebook. And she has the same name and maybe the same ability because it was all passed down, both the name and the ability. And I could buy this explanation, and I suppose now's the time to fully acknowledge that Ymir does reveal herself to be a Titan shifter at the end of episode 29, the 4th episode of season 2. She jumps out into the Titans that are attacking Utgard Castle where Krista is, and has what I think is probably the coolest transformation of the show so far. We see like the bones and the fibers and everything just come up and build to this big maw open with these sharp teeth and everything. It's a great view. I love it. But she does this. She jumps into the attacking Titans to protect Krista. Again, reinforcing the idea of just how important Krista must be. So I've got a third possibility that I really like about Ymir. And this possibility involves her being the same Ymir, the Ymir Sama or the Lady Ymir that's mentioned in Ilsa's notebook. And I think she's been the same age she is now for a long time. I think that being a Titan transformer has an effect on aging. That someone may appear younger than they are, kind of like a vampire. And I like this not just because I like it, but because I think another cadet is older than they appear. And I think it's because they are a shifter too. And I think they were at Shiganshina. But more on that later. I still have a few things to say about Krista and Ymir. Oh, but the aging thing. Maybe I should acknowledge that Eren is a Titan shifter, and we've seen him age, this is true, but we haven't seen him age since the first time he transformed into a Titan. So maybe something about that first transformation is when you get locked into that age. I'm not saying I'm right, just that the possibility is still on the table. But back to Ymir and Krista. Their conversations show that memory loss or unreliable memories may be at play in this story too. Ymir references a promise she and Krista made to one another on a snowy mountain during training, but acknowledges that Krista probably doesn't remember it. So now we're introducing an element of memory loss, right? This tells us that characters in the show may not remember things about themselves or others that they once knew. Heck, we've already seen Eren have amnesia about what his father did to him. He only remembers it in dreams. And what was this training that Ymir mentioned? My immediate assumption is that it was the cadet training. But we got to see a lot of cadet training, and I don't recall seeing any snowy mountains. So, was it maybe Titan training of some kind? Can this go back to the broken promise I keep theorizing about? Also, another reason to think that Ymir is much older than she looks is when she's in the castle with Reiner and everybody, she's scavenging for food. And we get this info card that tells us this castle's very old. It tells us that the history of the castles is actually forgotten. Nobody knows why they were built, what they were intended to defend against, so we know that this world has a lost history. But Ymir finds a can of food and she reads the label. She knows it's pickled herring, which doesn't sound real appetizing to me, but to each his own, I suppose. But Reiner is shocked she can read the label, because the language on it is not the common tongue presently spoken in the world. So my conclusion is that this is a dead language, and Ymir can read it because she's not just older than she looks, but maybe Ymir is truly ancient. Or an alien. Or an ancient alien. But Reiner acts a little cagey here too, like he has some secrets of his own. but I'll have plenty to say about Reiner in just a minute. So the last hint of mystery that I'll touch on between Amir and Krista is Amir's insistence that Krista would rather die a heroic death than live. So I don't know if this is because of Krista's secret status, like maybe she's the crown princess like I said before, but she's burdened with the pressure of possibly being a ruler someday and she's scared of the stress of reigning. So dying a heroic death would leave her like a proud legacy, but spare her the burden of the crown. I feel like I really went a long way with that one, but I'm trying to get a grip on Amir's accusations here. Or maybe it's reincarnation, seriously. Like Krista and Amir are reincarnations of previous entities, and Krista always dies some kind of needless heroic death. I think everything's on the table as strange as things have gotten. Just stuff to think about. So now I suppose I need to talk a little bit about Reiner. The title of episode 29 is Soldier, and I'm pretty sure the soldier it refers to is Reiner. We see Reiner really kind of step it up in this episode. He fistfights a Titan, then lifts the thing up on his shoulders like an 80s action hero, throws it into a window so Amir can do a karate kick out the window. This episode really does drive home the point that Reiner is a really big, strong guy. He's a real big, strong guy. Also, in the whole scuffle there, Reiner gets bitten by a Titan, Krista cleans the wound with the last of Elvis's booze, and Reiner just takes it like a tough guy. He doesn't even flinch. He kind of reminds me of Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. He's got this knife wound and it's being sterilized with a bottle of whiskey. The lady asks, "Doesn't that hurt?" And his answer, "Pain don't hurt." I have to admit, I'm kind of crazy about Swayze. Rest in peace, you dirty dancer. But Reiner is an action hero. And we see a flashback to his youth, maybe one of the formative moments that led him to become such a hero. And I think a young Bearholt is there, and a Titan attacks. And then there's this third guy, who I'm guessing is another friend of theirs, or maybe a sibling. He's a young-looking guy. He jumps in and appears to sacrifice himself to save Reiner. I figure we'll find out more about this event as the show continues. But if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was snowy when this happens. And it makes me think of Amir talking about an oath on a snowy mountain. And I think about Reiner acting like he knows or suspects something about Amir in that earlier scene when she's eating the pickled herring. Also, Connie points out that Reiner saved him just like Annie did. And Annie was kind of an action hero. So what I'm getting at is I think there are enough context clues to make me feel pretty certain Reiner is a Titan. And I think Reiner is older than he appears. And this is because I think we've seen Reiner in Titan form before. I think it's Connie who asks if Reiner has always been a soldier. And the answer is no, he used to be a warrior. So I have to think for a minute, what's the difference between a warrior and a soldier? Well, I think there's a lot. And some soldiers must be warriors at times, but they have to be more than just a warrior, right? A warrior makes war, a warrior kills, but a soldier protects, and a soldier defends, and a soldier has discipline and is part of something larger than oneself. And look, full disclosure, the closest I've ever come to being a soldier is that I was in the Weeblos in 5th grade, so I'm just talking from like a reader or a watcher's experience, but I think my points are still valid. So I think Reiner is a soldier now because he's in the Scouts. But 5 years ago, I think he was a warrior. And I think he killed and destroyed in Shiganshina because I think Reiner might be the armored Titan. I mean, I was also convinced that Rico was the female Titan, so my track record isn't very good at this. But honestly, it comes down to the hair. The female Titan's hair kind of look like Annie's, and Titan Aaron and Aaron have sort of a similar hair. And I'm convinced there's like this beast boy running around in the woods that turns into the beast Titan. But the armored Titan, he's this big, strong guy with spiky blonde hair. So why not Reiner? Reiner is really shown here to be a big, strong guy. He's got the blonde hair that's a little bit spiky. Of course, this depends on my aging theory being correct, because I don't think, Reiner would be old enough when Shiganshina fell to have been the armored Titan unless there's something behind my aging theory. Also, kind of extending this out a little bit, if Reiner's a Titan, Bernholt must be also, because those guys seem to know everything about each other. They were kids together, and now they're cadets together, so if Reiner's aging at a different rate, or Reiner has stopped aging, so has Bernholt. Now, the only other Titan I can think of is the Colossal Titan, but that just doesn't really seem very much like Bernholt to me. Not at all. So I might be way off here, but I'm just throwing it out there. It's what I do. And I think the snow is significant because I don't think any of the Aaron Levi stories have shown snow at all. Like, I've watched them all up to this point. I don't remember seeing any snow, but sometimes I miss stuff. So I think the snow is a marker of a different time and also probably a different place, like there was some other place and then humans migrated to where they are now. But if I'm right or wrong, please don't tell me. Let me find out the hard way, the same way you did. Let me just watch the show in ignorance and bliss, because I can have as much fun being wrong as I can being right. So with that, I'm going to go watch a couple more episodes and see what happens. And remember, I'm proud of you for watching anime, and I'll talk to you soon. Because I think Reiner might be the armored titan. Because I think Reiner might be the armored titan.